Listen, I want to tell you a story that not everyone will understand the first time, but it will change your idea of strength, faith, and courage. This is a story not only about boxing, but about life, about how you can stand against the world and be yourself. I was just a boy from Louisville, where the streets smelled of damp earth and factory smoke, where you could find trouble in every yard and a chance to become someone in every basement. My arms were thin, my legs were fast, but those who saw me for the first time laughed. This boy will never be a champion. They did not know that true strength begins within, not in the fists. They did not see that I was ready to do anything to change my life, even if it meant going against the whole world. Imagine the sound, the clatter of boxing gloves on the bag, the smell of leather, the smell of sweat, the smell of fear and hope all at once. There, in the dark hall of Joe Marshall, I felt for the first time that I could be great. But even then, in the darkness, doubts whispered, "You're too weak, you're too young, no one believes in you." And you know what? I had my doubts too, but I decided, if I give up now, no one will remember me. And I wanted to leave a mark. This story is about falling and rising, about defeats and victories, about those who laughed and those who believed. It's about how to become a legend even when the whole world is against you, and how a legend lives on even when you leave the ring. Listen carefully, because next I'm going to tell you how a small-town boy became Muhammad Ali, and how he learned to fight not just for titles, but for his freedom, for his faith, for himself. I was Cassius Clay, a boy from Louisville, where the streets smelled of damp earth and tobacco smoke, and the cars roared so loudly that it seemed as if the city never slept. I was thin, fast, but weak in the hands. Once my bicycle was stolen, and that was the first time I saw that the world gives nothing for free. I went to the police to complain, and they said, "If you want to change something, prove it by force." That's how I ended up in Joe Marshall's gym. There, the smell of leather, the smell of sweat, and the sound of fists hitting the bags mixed into something magical. Joe told me, "You can be great if you don't break." And I told myself, I won't break. He taught me more than boxing. He taught me to believe in myself. The first training sessions were brutal. I fell, I got hit. I was made fun of by other guys who already thought they were stronger. "You're too skinny," they would say. But I saw something else. I saw myself as a winner, even though no one else saw it. And it was then, in that small gym, that I realized the real battle starts inside. I remember those days when everything seemed to be against me. I would step into the ring, my heart pounding, and voices in my head saying, "You're too weak. You can't. This isn't for you." My first few fights were a disaster. I would lose, and after each fight, I would feel like the world was laughing in my face. The trainers frowned, looked at me as if I was wasting their time, and the other fighters taunted, "That guy will never be a champion." One day my own trainer said, "Clay, go home. You're not cut out for the big ring." I stood in the darkness of the empty gym. The only sound I could hear was the pounding of my heart and the roar of the city outside, and I wanted to give up. But then I realized one thing. If I gave up now, no one would remember me. I didn't want to be another failed story that was forgotten. So I started training harder than ever. My arms hurt, my legs broke, but I didn't give up. Every defeat turned into a lesson. Every punch I missed taught me to defend better, to move faster, to think smarter. It was then that I first experienced the power of perseverance. The world wanted to break me, but it didn't know that I couldn't be broken. And although I didn't know it then, those crises laid the foundation for the legend I would become. After all the defeats and doubts, small victories began. They weren't big, they weren't national titles, but they changed me from the inside. I was winning fights that had previously seemed impossible. Each victory gave me a confidence that no one could take away. I remember my first major title. It felt like I was on top of the world. But even as the applause rose, I saw those who hadn't believed in me before. Sports journalists, coaches of other teams, opponents who had laughed at me at the beginning. Their looks were mixed with disbelief and surprise. And that gave me even more strength. I understood the main thing. It doesn't matter how many people believe in you. It's important that you believe in yourself. Every punch I took, Every round became proof that perseverance conquers fear. I started to be noticed. I started to be listened to. And for the first time, I felt that I could change not only my life, but also the way people saw me. But big challenges lay ahead that turned my life upside down forever. Because small victories are just preparation for big decisions, for moments when you have to be yourself, even if the whole world is against you. And then came the moment when I realized, winning in the ring is not everything. I began to be invited to big fights. I was offered contracts. But inside I felt that the real battle was happening outside the ring. The world did not see me as I really was. And then I made one of the most important decisions of my life. I changed my name to Muhammad Ali. It was a symbol of a new me, a new faith, a new courage, a new vision of the world. I was no longer just Cassius Clay, a boy from the streets of Louisville, trying to prove himself to others. I became someone who sets the rules of the game. But this decision caused a storm. Some did not understand, some laughed, and some began to openly criticize me. "You have lost your way, you have changed," they said. But I knew that true strength is in your own truth. The biggest blow of my life came in the form of the Vietnam War. When the government wanted me to serve, I said no. At that moment, I risked everything: my titles, my career, my freedom. I said, "I'm not going to kill people for a war I don't believe in." This decision shocked the world. The newspapers screamed. The fans were outraged. I was expelled from boxing organizations. My license was taken away. My awards were confiscated. I was left without money, without a ring, without those I considered friends. But even in the darkness, I knew I stand my ground. I stand for principles. I stand for what I believe in. And it was then that I understood the main truth. True greatness is not in the title, but in the courage to be yourself. I trained in empty halls, alone, perfecting my technique, thinking about the future and how to come back stronger. This transformation was not only external, it changed my whole life. I stopped being afraid of society, criticism, fear of defeat. I learned to use the doubt and distrust of others as fuel for my own growth. Every "you can't" becomes motivation, every failure a lesson. I learned to lead, not follow, to fight not only for titles, but for myself, for my beliefs. And it was this period that prepared me for a global breakthrough, when the whole world not only saw me in the ring, but began to understand that Muhammad Ali is a symbol of struggle, courage, and freedom. Because true victory comes when you defeat not only your opponent in the ring, but also your doubts within yourself and your uncertainty in the world around you. Everything changed the night I stepped into the ring against Sonny Liston. I remember the spotlights piercing through the smoke of the arena, the thousands of eyes watching my every move, the pounding of the fans' hearts merging into one rhythm. I was not just a boxer. I was a boy from Louisville who had overcome doubt, defeat, and injustice, and now the world was going to see what I could really do. The first rounds were hard. Liston was strong, fast, dangerous. Everyone said I couldn't stand it, that I would lose. But inside I felt, now is my time. I danced around the ring, dodging, feeling his every move, every blow. I felt the rhythm of the fight, the rhythm of my own heart, the rhythm of my own destiny. And then came the moment that changed everything. I saw his weakness. I used everything I had learned in the dark halls of Louisville, everything that the experience of defeat and doubt had given me. And in the 9th round, I threw punches that were accurate, strong, decisive. Liston fell. I won. This victory was not just about the title. It was a symbol that you can become great, even when the whole world doesn't believe in you. I heard the arena explode with applause. The screams of the fans cut through the air. The journalists fell to their knees before a reality they couldn't deny. I became a legend not because of the strength of my fists, but because of the strength of my faith, perseverance, and the courage to be myself. The world began to look at me differently. People who used to laugh could now not believe their eyes. Those who criticized were now whispering, "This guy is a true legend." I became a symbol not only of boxing, but of freedom, courage, and the right to go against the grain. But life doesn't stop at one victory. There were new challenges ahead, and not only in the ring. I was faced with rivals, political conflicts, illnesses, and the fight for my own beliefs. The world had not yet seen the true power of Muhammad Ali, and I knew that even greater battles, even higher peaks lay ahead. But even legends face darkness. When I refused to go to war in Vietnam, the world turned against me. They took away my license. They took away my awards. They pushed me away from the ring. I was left without what I had built up over the years. No titles, no fights, no money. I remember those days of empty halls. Only the sound of my own breathing, the rumble of the bag I was beating alone in the dark, and the silence that weighed on my shoulders. Friends were leaving. People were laughing and saying, "He's broken. He's not a fighter anymore." I felt like the world was against me, that everything I fought for was gone. But then I remembered why I started all this. Not for titles, not for money, but for myself, for my beliefs. And I understood, falling is a chance. Falling is a lesson. Falling is an opportunity to rise stronger. I trained more than ever, even without an audience, without recognition, without support. Every hit on the bag was a step towards a comeback. Every round of an imaginary fight, preparation for a future victory. I saw a wall of distrust, criticism, fear in front of me. But I decided not to go around it, but to break through it. I learned that true greatness is not just about winning in the ring, but the ability to stay true to yourself, even when the world wants to break you. This period changed me more deeply than any battle. It taught me not to be afraid to stand against the world, even when it seemed all was lost. And I knew that someday I would return, because even in the darkest night, there is a ray of light, and I was ready to find it. After that fall, I realized one thing. The real fight doesn't always happen in the ring. The real fight is inside you. I trained until the pain felt like a part of my body, until the darkness of empty halls became my friend and doubt became my fuel. And then the day came when I came back. The first big fight after my comeback was something incredible. I went out against Joe Frazier. The world looked at me skeptically again. Everyone said, "He's not the same anymore. His time has passed." But when the first blows rang out, when the fists clenched, I felt, this is my moment. I danced around the ring, dodging, attacking, and each blow was a step towards restoring not only the title, but my own dignity. The fight went on nonstop, and I felt every move of Frazier, every impulse, every strategy. In the 9th round, I landed a precise blow, and everything changed. I won, and not just won. I proved to myself and the world that even after falling, you can come back even stronger. But the comeback did not end with this fight. The following legendary fights, with George Foreman, Ken Norton, showed that my spirit was indomitable. I danced in the ring, smiled at my opponents, amazed the audience and journalists. Each fight became a theater not only for sport, but for spirit, will, and resilience. People who had doubted before could no longer believe their eyes. "This guy is incredible," they said. He became a legend not just because of his punches, but because of his character. And it was true. For Muhammad Ali's strength was not in his punches, but in his heart, in his determination, in his ability to stand his ground when the whole world was against you. These fights proved that true greatness is not just about titles, but about the ability to rise from the fall, to turn crisis into fuel, and to keep going no matter what. I learned that a legend lives on even when the body fails, as long as the spirit remains unbroken. When the ring was left behind, life prepared a new battle for me, much more difficult than the blows of my opponents. It was a battle with time itself. With each passing year, I felt my body begin to betray me. My hands, which had been beating so fast, suddenly began to tremble. The voice that had screamed at press conferences and challenged the world became quiet and fragile. I learned that I had Parkinson's disease. It was a blow that could not be blocked. I was faced with a new reality. I could no longer dance around the ring. I could not raise my arms as high as before. And many again said, "His time is up." But I already knew the main secret. Time can never take away your strength if you keep the faith. I began to live a new life. Now my fights were not against Joe Frazier or George Foreman. Now my fights were for those who suffered in the shadows. I helped children, did charity work, opened centers, supported hospitals. I became the voice of those who were not heard. And you know, it was even stronger than any knockout. Because winning in the ring is one thing, but winning in the hearts of millions is something else. I remember when, in 1996, when the Olympic Games opened in Atlanta, I was entrusted with lighting the torch. My hands were shaking, the flame wavered, but when the fire was lit, the world held its breath. It was a moment when the entire stadium cried, not because they saw a boxer, but because they saw a man who didn't give up. The disease took away my strength, but it could not take away my faith. I kept telling people, be brave, believe in yourself, don't give up. And that became my last great fight, to show that even when the body weakens, the spirit can remain invincible. Sometimes I was asked, do you regret dedicating your life to fighting? I smiled and replied, I wouldn't change a thing, because I was born to fight, and I still fight. Every story has an ending, and even the strongest fighters one day leave the ring forever. In 2016, the world heard the news. Muhammad Ali was no more. He passed away in a hospital in Arizona, quietly, after a long battle with an illness that lasted decades. He was 74, and it seemed that not only America, but the whole world held its breath. Millions of people cried because they understood, not just a champion had passed away. A man had passed away who had made the planet look differently at courage, freedom, and self-belief. His funeral turned into an event watched around the world. People stood with posters, with photos, shouting his name as if he were still entering the ring. And, you know, in a way it was true, because even after death he remained present. Muhammad Ali's legacy is not measured by his victories or his titles alone. It is the legacy of the idea that you can be bigger than sport, bigger than fame. He showed that strength is not just about the fist, but also the word, that true courage is about standing up for what is wrong, even when it comes at a high price. Streets, stadiums, foundations are named after him. His quotes are heard in classrooms, in movies, in motivational speeches. He became a symbol not only of boxing, but also of the human spirit, which cannot be broken. And even those who have not seen a single one of his fights know who Ali is. Because he was not just a boxer. He was a legend who made people believe that the impossible is possible. Death could not put an end to his story. Because true legends do not die. They remain in the hearts. They live in those who take their lessons and move on. And today, when someone faces difficulties, he remembers Ali's words. Impossible is just a word behind which the weak hide. So his last round was not a defeat, but the strongest victory, a victory over time, over oblivion, over death.